starting the recording now. That way, if you have any colleagues or are unable to stay the whole time for the webinar, that you'll be able to share that recording afterwards. Also, please be aware I have muted everyone, so you can see next to the participants button where you'll show up that you can unmute yourself if you have any questions or need anything. Also, feel free to put something in the chat box if that would help, or you have any questions or concerns afterwards. Just to introduce myself, I am Jennifer Lurch from George Mason University. I work at the Center for Advancing Correctional Excellence. And I know I've worked with a number of you guys that are on the phone with us. And so what we're going to be talking about today on this webinar is, first we're going to start with a small overview of the program tool for adults, because I know many of you have completed the program tool. However, for some of you it may have been a while ago, as well as for some of you I know it's still upcoming in just a bit. And so we'll just do a brief overview of what the tool is and the purpose. And then I'll be going over the updates to the program tool and what is new in the system. Then I'll also be touching on what are the next steps. What are we hoping to hopefully have you guys do after this webinar in regards to the fact that the program tool has been updated. So the program tool for adults is meant to help treatment and justice agencies classify and assess their existing therapeutic interventions. The classification portion of the tool facilitates treatment matching by grouping programs entered into target areas that are identified as need areas by the individual tool. And as I know, we've been working with many of you guys, your grantee sites, doing the program tool. The program tool really enables programs to be able to identify quality improvement areas that could be made, the improvements can be made in to help with the client outcomes. And this is all based on what we know from the available research on what effective treatment components are. So when it comes to this idea of quality improvement, operationalizing quality can be quite challenging. First, you really need to identify what the key features are associated with effective programming, which should be empirically based, using systematic reviews and meta-analyses. An effective intervention should also be empirically supported by theory. This is critically important as programs can waste a lot of time and money on well-meaning programs, but they become theoretically or empirically baseless efforts. And so we want to make sure that ultimately it doesn't matter if the program uses the most well-supported methods in theory, but they also need to make sure that they implement them correctly as they were intended to be implemented. And so implementation fidelity becomes a very important component, particularly in our program tool results, but in general throughout the field when we're thinking about programming that needs to be a concern. So without addressing issues of fidelity and quality implementation, programs have limited internal and external validity. And so this is why the program tool for adults places such a strong emphasis on implementation fidelity. So building on this, on the importance of quality improvement, we know that the quality of programming matters. And in the criminal justice field, the Correctional Program Assessment Inventory, or the CPAI, and its newer version, the CPC, have been used quite frequently over the last decade and a half to be able to assess quality of programming. And essentially what we've learned from that is that most programs will score in unsatisfactory areas, and that the program quality is not sufficient enough to actually reduce recidivism. We can get the best recidivism reduction results when we have higher quality programming. And this is very important because basically it helps us decide what we need to invest our time and effort in. The work of the technical assistance providers is very important in helping jurisdictions improve the quality of programming, and that is one of the reasons why we developed the R&R tool in the first place. We wanted to give jurisdictions and programs like yourself an easier way to access a way of getting feedback on their programs. And so the R&R tool classification system, as many of you may be familiar with, but just to review, really focuses on these classification areas within, based on the research of effective correctional interventions. And so for each group, we have a good deal of evidence that supports why these needs should be addressed and how we can address them effectively with certain programming components. And so with drug dependence, we know we should focus treatment on the use of heroin, cocaine, amphetamines, and methamphetamines where the linkage between criminal behavior and drug use are clear. And then we know in the criminal thinking area that the criminal thinking is focuses on the big four criminogenic needs, including a history of antisocial behavior, antisocial personality patterns, antisocial associates, and antisocial cognitions. And we know by addressing these antisocial thinking patterns that we can really have a strong impact on reducing future criminal behavior. And then we know in the self-improvement and management area, we're looking at programming that is focused on improving social problem and social skills, and that idea of self-control that would help individuals resist pressures to become involved in drug use, delinquency, and crime. In the social and interpersonal category, we're really focused on programming that looks at family issues, relationships, conflict resolution, because we know family and marital circumstances in particular falls into that Andrews and Bonta's area of the moderate four and could have significant impact on being able to improve an individual's chance of success. And then that life skills area focuses around programming that helps stabilize a person, particularly in the areas of employment, education, and housing. Education and employment deficits are also part of that moderate four category under Andrews and Bonta's R&R model. And so we know that the inability to find employment, low education, and unstable housing can be stressors that make going back to a criminal lifestyle more appealing or make maintaining a crime-free lifestyle more challenging. So then when we have the program tool, it's classified into one of those 6 areas. As many of you have seen when you get the results, and this is still the same, this has not changed, you have feedback into 6 different domain areas. That feedback is in, so you have the risk area, which focuses on the risk principle and the idea that we should be matching the intensity of services to the client's risk level. Because we know based on the research that providing more intensive services to higher risk clients produces the greatest reduction in recidivism. And we know then we have that area on that need area that really focuses on how well is the program doing at following the need principle by targeting appropriate criminogenic needs to reduce recidivism. We also then have the responsivity area, the domain, that focuses on how well the program follows effective modalities and approaches based on their target behavior and addressing specific responsivity factors. Next, the dosage area focuses on the total amount of treatment an individual is intended to receive, including such factors as the number of clinical hours and the frequency of meetings, as well as whether the program has phases or aftercare is a core component of the program. We also have this domain called restrictiveness. The restrictiveness focuses on controls or structures that are incorporated in the program as part of behavior change. And when you want to think about this restrictiveness area, it's really not limited to a concern or a need for a criminal justice program, but all programs, when you're thinking about that behavior change, really think about it as the controls and structures that help constrain individual behavior, especially while you're in that phase of trying to get them stabilized in their activities particularly for you guys as grantees at that reentry phase when they're first walking out the door. And then implementation is actually the biggest category considered by the program tool. It includes such factors as staff credentials, evaluation techniques, use of coaching techniques, completion criteria, tracking client characteristics. The reason the implementation is so important is because how much we know about the importance of implementation quality and the fidelity to models and what that can mean for a program that should be effective and whether it is effective when it's actually put in place. And then when you're thinking about the program tool results, I will say the program tool results are going to look very similar to exactly the same as you saw before. There have been some minor changes to the scoring, but overall for you guys as grantees, we've tested quite a few, and the changes don't seem to significantly impact scores that have been received in the past based on the new scoring. And the output you see here, as many of you guys have seen, provide you a score in each of the domains that we talked about. And when you click on any of the bars, just like before, you'll see a brief description of that area, as well as bullet points that provide feedback on improvements that could potentially be made within your program. So before I move into the actual specific updates to the program tool at this point, does anyone have any questions? Okay. So now we're going to review the updates to the program tool that we have put into effect. So an overview of the changes that have been made, and for most of you who have completed the tool at some point, you'll notice that many of the questions that you see in the new version are very familiar. We didn't do a lot of removing of questions. And what we did focus on in this update was revamping the questions overall, focusing a lot on the functionality of the tool and making it more intuitive to use from the user's point of view. And so to do this, we reorganized the questions, we reworded questions, and we added clarifications to address the common questions we had from users. And I have to say, for many of you guys, because we spent time with you on site and at different conferences, a lot of the feedback that we incorporated into the change of the program tool came from suggestions that we had from you guys in using this tool. One of the other things, the big factors you'll notice, is making the tool much more functional in terms of the tabs, and I'll show you what that means in just a second. But we wanted to make it easier for you to maneuver between sections. Because I know when you're trying to get information to complete this tool, it's easier to be able to move around, go back and forth, and jump pages as needed. So we did add some questions to the tool that you will notice, and I'll show you a couple of those coming up. But these added questions were mostly based around the setting of the program. So for many of you guys who are, because you guys are community providers, and the setting for the tool before, you may have noticed, was very much geared towards community. So you guys probably won't notice the additional questions as much as if you do any program tool entries that are based on a correctional setting. What we did is we tried to make some response options as well as actual questions more applicable to a program that was being completed within a correctional facility. And so when you select setting, which is now earlier in the program tool, that then modifies some of the questions that you've received and also impacts some of the scoring that is done within the programming so that the program can be more setting appropriate. So just as before, the information that you need can come from the same places when you're thinking about completing the program tool. So none of that has changed. We do have an updated what information do I need to complete the tool. I know for the 2017 grantees who were on the phone, you guys have been receiving this as part of our implementation site visit. For my grantees from the 2015-2016 cohorts, we'd be more than happy to share this with you. It will be on the website shortly, but we're still getting the update done to the website resources that are available, but those should be available by the end of the week. All right, so when you first now go into the tool, you've signed in and you've selected the R&R Program Tool for Adults in the top tab. Now when you come in, you'll notice some new things. In that top right side, you'll see where it says Start the R&R Program Tool for Adults. That's where you'll go to enter a new program tool entry. It'll take you to a screen that provides a little bit more instruction, and then you'll select actually starting the program to fully go into it. You'll also notice that on your left top side there, you'll have two options. It'll default to My Programs being the program tool entries that you have entered. And then you'll also have the tab there, or the option you can select that's Completed Jurisdiction Programs. That will take you, if you have permission to see them, that will take you to the list of all completed jurisdiction programs that have been completed under your jurisdiction that you have access to. And then down under My Programs, you can see that you have the ability to view, copy, and reassess an entry. And so I'm just going to click here. So you can see a little bit closer here. What you'll now see under Status is where you can get the results that use the new scoring mechanism. And you'll see where it has either the results or it will say In Progress. In Progress means that you can go in and edit the tool to complete it, versus if it says Results, that means it's been completed, and then you can go in and reassess the tool. The reassess is essentially an edit. Once you go in and select that, it will create a new modified version. So then you'll see where you'll still have the date it was created, but then you'll also be able to notice any date there where it was modified as well. And you can also archive programs to reduce the list. What you'll notice is different here is that there used to be in that last column the button said Delete. What we did is change this to Archive. And what that enables you to do is actually be able to select Archive, and then I'll actually go back here and show you. And what you can do is when you're looking at that list, so there where you see My Programs and Show, where you can select the number of programs you want to see at once, you can actually select whether you want to include archived programs or not within the list that you're looking at under My Programs. We thought this may make it a little bit easier because there's times when you really are not wanting to delete a program, but you just want it in the list or not in the list because maybe it is an older program and it's just no longer relevant. As I said, once you select on that first page, Start New Program Tool, you'll get a page where you get a little bit more instruction and the information will be available for what you need before you go into the program tool. Again, on this page, you still have the option if you'd like to go back to your list of programs or you would like to view all the completed programs in your jurisdiction. And then if not, you can continue to the tool in order to enter a new entry. Once you come into the tool, one of the first things you'll notice is if everyone remembers, or the folks who have done this before, you used to come into the tool and you had to just continuously hit Save and Continue on the bottom of the page. And so you could only go forward one page and backward one page. There was no jumping around. And so given the length of the tool, what we did is We separated things out more so into these topic areas of population, metrics, staff, eligibility, and so forth. And so each of these tabs, what they enable you to do is move backward and forward easily within the tool. There's not actually a necessity. You could be on the controls tab and realize you need to go back to the population one to update something, and you can do that. When you leave a tab, when you're clicking around the tabs, it is automatically saving what you're doing, but there is also the Save button that you can select there at the top and bottom of every page. And then you can also hit Save and Next. Save and Next will automatically move you forward to the next tab, which is very nice when you get to the bottom of the page, just to you just want to progress on to the next tab. Or you could come up to the top and just select the next tab you want to go forward to. And as I said, many of the questions will appear very familiar to you. They are the same questions, although what you'll see is that there are tweaks for clarity of what the wording is on the question, as well as added descriptions to help ease completion. So, and I always like to say, yes, we have this new version, but if there are still areas where it's a question that doesn't seem clear to you as you use this, or you just think maybe other users would like some clarity on, we would really appreciate any feedback you have. That way we can continue to add clarification wherever it would be helpful. Because our goal here is to make this tool sustainable and easy to use so that ideally there's very few questions that need to be asked of us or anyone else as you're going through this. And so question we have is, so does it save the information if I just click another tab instead of clicking Save and Next? And the answer is yes, it will. It will save the information that you had entered. And I have to say, we added the Save and Next button as just a hopefully helpful thing. I know me personally, it always makes me nervous when you're clicking around things and you're not sure if this saved or didn't save. And so I have to say I was a big advocate for having the Save and the Save Next button, just as like a safety net of doing that save procedure. Because I do advocate, I think it's always a safety valve. If you need to step out in the middle of completing this, which is very likely, then I would just hit the Save button just to be sure you're good. And that way when you come back, you know everything you had just entered was saved. So then also within the tool, if you guys remember from previous entries, there was only 3 required questions. We actually decided to make several other questions additionally required within the program tool. The reason for this was because the new required questions are necessary to at least categorize a program properly into one of those 6 categories, you know, the A, B, C, and D, E, and F programs. The goal of this being is that we do have some jurisdictions, and this may be something you guys want to think about, and we'll talk about this in the next steps, but we wanted to make sure that jurisdictions that maybe just want to use the program tool in order to develop a list of programs in the programming areas that are available, so as they're using the individual tool, they at least just know the basic information and target behavior that programs are reaching out for. And so they really just want the basic information they need in order to put a program into a group A or a group B. Those are the questions we made required. That way, if you only do those required questions, at least the program will be categorized properly. They will not have enough questions asked to have a proper score and quality assessment on the results, but at the very least, they will get classified correctly. That way, when you're using the individual tool, you can know what programs, what Group A programs you have available, for instance. Now, with that, we did that as well. That way, perhaps you have some programs that are in your jurisdiction that you don't feel that they would benefit as much, maybe from the feedback on the quality improvement piece, because they're exterior to your programming and a referral. But you do want them included in the program tool as you think about using the individual tool to make referrals, so that you just know what's out there and available for your clients. And so it's a possibility then that you could do the program tool for those. And I will say the required questions is significantly less. It is only, I don't have the number in front of me, but it's about 15 to 20 questions are required. The number varies by required questions based on what the program target is that has been selected, but it's much more abbreviated than doing the full tool, which we have you guys do as grantees under SAMHSA, but it may be a good option to do the abbreviated version for some exterior programs you'd want included for referrals. One thing, too, to keep in mind when it comes to moving between tabs here with the required questions, the required questions only pop up in this way with an error once you go to submit. You can jump back and forth between tabs and everything else without having something on that tab that was required completed. It'll only stop you once you go to hit submit on the tool. So when you go to hit submit and you realize you've got some questions, not only will you get that error at the top that lists those questions, on the page that the required field is needed, you'll also see those questions pop up in red and show that this is a required field. So as I said, there are some new questions within the program tool. However, with you guys being community programs, there's only a couple that you'll see as new questions. These right here are the new two examples of the new questions. Because we know peer navigators and peer support specialists are a growing part of our field, and we wanted to make sure to have some questions on there about those folks and those parts of the program. You'll also notice some of the questions that stand out to me as we asked about trauma-informed care. We also ask about ASAM levels if you're a substance use program, and we also find out we also ask more about whether there's child care available, when programming is available. So you can start to think about when you're looking at what the program has available, both logistically and quality-wise. We also, to everyone's relief, mine included, so since most of you guys have completed the program tool, the good news is the program tool entry that you completed before has been migrated into the new tool. So just as you see here in this screenshot, this is a tool that had been completed before. And so what happened is I come in under My Programs Completed or under Jurisdiction, all my completed jurisdiction programs. And when I select Reassess there, you'll see that the tool is already completed as much as possible with information that had been entered before. And so what you'll need to do, or what we would ask that you do potentially in the future, is just go through and obviously maybe take a look at the old information and just make sure things still look okay. And then you'll just need to update information and any of the new questions that are in the tool. But that way, you guys don't have to go in and re-enter the tool or be starting from scratch. That way, anything that was entered before, you get to start with that information. So once you get to the results of the tool, you'll see that you have now both the total client's capacity as well as the criminal justice client capacity that was entered into the tool. You'll have the description entered, which is one of the required questions as well, that describes generally what the program does. You'll have the ability to print the results on the tool. That way, just as before, it comes out as a PDF. You'll also see right away where it has entered, when it was entered and when it was last modified. So also, I know a number of you guys, your main target has been re-entry case management of some sort. And so for many of you now, if you recall, there was a link that used to be present that you could switch over to your re-entry case management specific results, and that way you could see what those look like in addition to the main results of the program tool. Now how that works is when you first complete a tool, you'll see here on that top screenshot that you'll automatically default to your main results. Now, if you're not a reentry case management program or a specialty court program, there will be no option next to that. You'll only see the main results. However, if you're a reentry case management program, with the case management being the primary target, or a specialty court program, you'll actually see there to the right, you can click on that and toggle over to the results that are specific for those types of programs. You will also see right underneath of that first estimated annual capacity table, you'll also see any specialized reports listed based on what your selections were within the program tool. So these are those responsivity guides that came out on the results before. Nothing has changed about those results. They just now show, fortunately, actually I really like, that they show up now higher on the results, so they're much clearer where they are. If you remember before, they used to just be at the bottom of the results. It was hard to find those. And you'll always have that user guide to the specialized reports that just gives an overview of what the purpose of those things, what those PDFs are. And all of those PDFs, just as before, they are PDFs and they're printable. That way you can take them and use them with staff or with clients. So you'll see when you go in there that the results and recommendations will look very similar to your previous entries. There really shouldn't be many changes. There are some slight changes on the scoring in a number of places, especially like if a question was added and it involved in the scoring changed slightly. But I will say by and large for community programs, what we're seeing is maybe a percentage or two shift in the total score. It's more for the incarcerated programs, which now have some more specific setting programming related to maybe the drug testing that happens on the inside, or the cell and housing situation and visitation, that they're tending to see a little bit larger shift in the score from before. But if you have any questions as you go into your tool following this, please feel free to reach out to myself or any of the colleagues that I have that have been working with you, and we'll be happy to look through any changes or any questions that you may have about the results that you've received from before versus now. And this is just an example of when you toggle over to that reentry case management specific results, if that was your target behavior. This is the type of results you see. And these are exactly the same as they were before. Each of these, as you select them, just like the main findings, there's a little explanation below each. The yield sign means there's some improvements that could be made. The education as you see with here with education, when it's the red X, means that a little bit more improvement is needed, and the green check marks means everything is good to go. So these results appear just as they did before. They're just in a little bit more functional and easy to access location, and it also makes it easier for you to switch back and forth between both the specific findings and the main results. So before I move on to the next steps, I will ask if anyone has any questions they'd like to express. Okay. Thank you, Jeffrey. I appreciate that. So the next steps, as I'm sure many of you are probably thinking, so now what would you like us to do with this? So one thing is either with us, because I know we're doing TA calls as well as just coming off of doing a lot of the implementation visits. I believe I have my next site visit. So as we're doing this, feel free to go in and try out the new version by updating your previous entry. And so that for that, you will make sure to select the reassess option with that tool. So feel free to go in, take a look at the data, take a look at the information that's there and update your results with any of the new questions, or perhaps even some updated information since the last time you did the program tool entry. Because I know for a number of like my 2015, 2016s, that you guys may be reaching a point, because for some of you I know it's been about a year since we did it with you guys, that you would want to go in anyway and do a reassessment of your programming. So this will be a good opportunity with the new version to go take care of that. So you can feel free to do that. Also, I know a number of the 2017 programs that we were just on site with, many of you did not get an opportunity to do the new tool since it just came online. So we're more than happy. We would love to work with you guys to make sure we get your information updated so that you guys have the most up-to-date version of the tool as you're moving forward with thinking about quality improvement over the next bit. Also, when you're thinking about the program tool and doing new entries, because I know our main focus with you guys as grantees has been for you guys to complete it for your grantee program. But we also would encourage that you think about other programs maybe within your larger organization or that you use quite frequently in the community you're in with most of your clients, that you may want to think about adding their information so that they're available there. And you can think about doing that in one or two ways, is that you guys, knowing what you know about the programs you work with, may be able to just go through and answer enough with the required questions just to get those programs classified so they will show up on your individual tool. Or if you would really like to dive a little deeper and look at the quality assurance, you can feel free to do that as well. And that is definitely one of those things. If you're kind of questioning it or not sure, we'd be more than happy to have those conversations with you and help work that out. So the question I have here is, will the tool still be available to awardees after the grant period ends to use as part of their programming? So the the R&R tool suite is available as long as you guys are under the grant. And actually I may default that a little bit to you, Sarah, once I turn over. But the program, or the whole tool suite, is really available during the grant period. If you're interested in continuing use of the program, and I can speak to a number of previous year ORP grantees, they also have now started using it under other grants that they have available and just funding it under those grants. Like maybe some of them are other SAMHSA grants or BJA grants. And we have, I don't even know at this point how many sites operating using the tool, and we'd be more than happy to talk with you about continued use. And so if you're having any trouble with the tool, the new version of the tool, because we are a small shop here, and we really do, we've tried to test this thing as much as possible, but as with any new rollout, there are sure to be kinks. And we appreciate any feedback that we can get from you guys as users as you're doing it. I always say it is better to ask and bring it up. It may be just something we need to add clarification about, or maybe it's something that we really need to address and fix. But we really appreciate any feedback that we can get from you guys as users. So are there any other questions right now from anyone about the new program tool or any other R&R questions? Okay, so what I will encourage you to do, actually, Sarah has, and Sarah, I'm going to actually, if you wouldn't mind maybe unmuting yourself.
Okay.
And I'll turn that over to you, Sarah, because I know Sarah wanted to mention to you about the program planning and training. But if anybody has any other questions, feel free to add those in the chat box as Sarah is discussing the great training that's coming up.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. And to address your most recent question about is the R&R tool accessible to grantees once their grant period ends, I'm going to have to defer that question to John Berg, who is one of the GPOs over many of the ORP programs. I will send that question to him and see if we can't get an answer to you. He is currently out of the office this week attending the National Drug Court Conference, so it will not be an immediate answer, but we'll hopefully get an answer to you sooner rather than later. I wanted to take an opportunity since I have all of the ORPs on today's webinar to remind you that the Opioid Overdose Prevention Program Planning Training is taking place June 20th and 21st in Bethesda, Maryland, and this is a required training for all 2017 offender reentry programs, as well as if you got a specific invitation from your GPO that was addressed to your grant, you are required to attend. I want to make sure that everyone is aware the section in your RFA that dealt with the opioid overdose prevention plan was a congressionally mandated statement that SAMHSA had to put into your RFA. Therefore, this training is a mandated training for all of you to develop and implement opioid overdose prevention program plans. I want to let you know some brief information that we do have registration still open through this Saturday, June 2nd, and the room block is still open through this Saturday. Jennifer, if you could advance the slide, please.
Sorry, it's frozen up on me.
Okay, that's what I wanted. I wasn't sure. And so we are going to have the Center for Health and Justice at task crafting this training, and there is going to be an introductory webinar that is going to be recorded so that you can listen to it on your own time before this training that will allow you to collect information to better inform you about what you need to know about opioids in your community and what your community is doing to address opioids prior to attending this training. There are continuing education hours available for this training. I believe we have 14 hours available, and we have a room block set aside for this training. The link for this training says a little bit more than opioid. It's all found on the training website, and I'll make sure we get a reminder out to everybody so you can have this information. But we are actually holding a simultaneous training for drug courts at the same time, so the link says a little bit more than just opioid overdose. What we know from the version of the training from last year, which many of you attended, is that it's incredibly beneficial to have more than one individual from your program attend as you work in your small team from the people from your grant to develop action plans that you can take back to your community to help inform your opioid overdose prevention program plan. So if there are people who are new to your staff, particularly for the 2015 and 2016 grantees who would be interested in attending this training, if there's individuals from 2017 or offender reentry programs who are not yet registered for this training, please act on it as soon as possible, as we do want to fill the room, and this is a mandated training for all ORP programs. And I'll make sure, again, that you get the email this afternoon that has my contact information in it, so if you have any questions, you can reach out to me.
Excellent. Great. Thanks so much, Sarah.
You're welcome.
All right. Does anyone have any other questions? All right, so with that, I want to thank everyone for participating today. I really appreciate it. And of course, if you have any questions, because I know me, I always get the questions as soon as I get in the system and start doing something. Feel free to reach out to us with those, either myself or to your contact you've been working with here at the center. All right. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.